Hello everyone, God bless you. Welcome back to Traveler of the Wood. I saw an interesting video the other day by Ancient Faith Ministries. They have a podcast, and of course I just now forgot the father's name who was running the podcast. But the podcast was called something to the effect of "Where Have All the Women Gone?" And essentially what the podcast was talking about was women being propagandized into being involved in the occult. You know, Wicca, witchcraft, astrology, tarot, all of this stuff. But what I thought was funny, throughout the podcast, he kept mentioning, oh, I know I'm getting a lot of pushback on this, or a lot of people have been commenting already when I said that this was what I was going to talk about, and people were upset about it. And he kept, just throughout the whole podcast, he kept talking about how controversial his take was, and, you know, telling everyone to calm down and all this stuff. And I thought that was so funny because there was nothing even remotely controversial in it at all. And I was thinking to myself, well, if people want to hear controversial takes on this, I have plenty. So I am not necessarily afraid of giving controversial takes because I don't answer to anyone that's paying me particularly. So I feel very fortunate to be in this place where I can say controversial things and it doesn't matter. But before I get into that subject, because that is a very big subject and it talks, you know, we can talk a lot about feminism and, you know, how women are easily controlled by the desire to have control, if that makes sense. But I'll get to that in a second. I want to preface all this, though, by reiterating a point that I've made before. And this point is that I am very pro-paganism. A lot of people find that disturbing, with me being a Christian and whatnot. I want to give a little bit of clarification on my reasoning. When I see people rejecting the neo-scientism, neo-atheism that has been plaguing our society for the last, 20 years or so, I am very grateful. Because when I see people returning to paganism, not only are people returning to their roots, which I think is great, and I definitely applaud paganism for the racial element of paganism. That's kind of reminding people where they come from and who they are as a people, especially white people. And when I say paganism too, I'm talking about Germanic, Nordic, and Celtic paganism. I'm not talking about any sort of New Age stuff. I'm talking about the old ways. I do celebrate this for pretty much the simple reason that at least people are acknowledging the divine now. And that's, to me, reason enough to celebrate in this kind of atheistic hellscape that we've been in for so long. But as far as the New Age stuff goes, there is a lot of stuff happening. And I feel like that Ancient Faith podcast didn't really talk about some of the things that I think are important points to this. So I want to bring them up. And the main one, of course, is race. There's a racial element to this. And no one, for some reason, wants to talk about this because talking about race is taboo. And luckily that, I think, is coming to an end. But I am very sick of being unable to publicly talk about race and racial differences because it's very obvious to anyone that we are not all the same. We have totally different ideas of rule of law. We have totally different ideas of spirituality. We have totally different ideas on all sorts of things. Yes, I agree that we are all God's children and we all are under this umbrella of protection of God. And I treat people ultimately the same, regardless of their race. But to pretend that there are no racial differences is completely absurd. And this goes into a lot of things when talking about New Ageism or people becoming involved in the occult, because there are different elements of this that speak to different races. And I think that's very interesting. Through my own study of demons, demons prey on what we want. They find out what we want, and that's the button that they press for us to allow them into our life. And with the occult stuff, it's very simple. It's practically an open door for them. So there are a lot of women who have been propagandized in recent years to start partaking in the occult. If you go to a Barnes & Noble, or a lot of bookstores really, not only is the section for, quote, the occult huge, but all throughout the store, there's just little displays of like, here's a bunch of books on astrology. Here's a bunch of books on tarot. Or look at these cool, pretty tarot decks. Here's a bunch of books on Wicca and spell casting and stuff. And that's being pushed on people, to get involved in this kind of thing. And of course, you do have what I call the mall Wiccans. I know that sounds silly, but growing up in the kind of hippie environment that I grew up in, I saw a lot of people, particularly women, get involved in Wicca, which is just hilarious to me. Wicca is just such a shoddy religious framework. I don't know why anybody I don't understand the appeal. I'll just put it that way. But I did see a lot of women go to this. And the mall Wiccans are the kind of Wiccans that go to Barnes & Noble, get a book on spell casting, read it, and then consider themselves a high-level magister. Obviously, these people are missing the point, and these women that do this are playing with forces that they have no idea how much it's going to affect their life, but they just do it anyway and wantonly and just have no clue. As I said a minute ago, growing up in the kind of hippie group, I saw a lot of women fall for this. Most of the women, I'd say maybe 90% of the women that I saw get involved in this turned Wicca into just their own thing and made it their own, spiritual practice. And it's really all for show. It's all for Instagram. And, they're doing stuff that's channeling demons into their life for sure. But they just have no idea what they're up to. And they, do live spell castings or readings or channelings or whatever. And they're just, it's so stupid. But the other 10% actually went deep and started to understand what casting magic was all about. They started doing this, and I got to watch in real time how it drove them all insane and ruined their life. One instance in particular, I'm not going to use any names, but this woman started getting into healing spells and was helping people with their ailments. And someone came to her and she did, some mystical, magical woo-woo, and this woman's problem went away. So this empowered her, made her feel like she had control over reality. And she started marketing herself as a healer and started doing stuff, leading workshops at some of these festivals and whatnot. Ironically, that first woman who she, healed of an ailment, what it did is just push that ailment right up into this woman's brain, essentially, into her mind. And that woman became stricken with mental illness. Now, this woman who I'm talking about that became a healer, she started suffering with mental illness the more that she started participating in this, and was institutionalized a couple times and just went through the whole thing. She's one of these that like every so often she has a mental breakdown and shaves her head, and her life is just constantly in shambles. And you would think she would realize, there's a lot of bad things happening to me all the time. Maybe I should quit playing with this stuff. But she didn't, and she continued to do that. I'm sure she's still doing it to this day, although I don't know. I haven't seen this person in over a decade. The point that I'm getting at here is that women that actually do learn about all of this stuff on a deep level ruin their life, essentially, with it. Because this stuff is real. What they don't realize, it's not a matter of, Wicca is real. It's a matter of These things are designed to open up demonic portals and invite demons into your life. And this will most certainly screw you up. Now, onto what I said at the beginning. There is a racial element to this. White women who have been inundated with feminist propaganda for their entire lives are very much interested in spiritual practice. But they're interested in spiritual practice that is, quote, empowering to them, that is something that openly rejects patriarchy and makes women the center of the show. And they're kind of seeking also just a personalized spirituality. They don't want to participate in anything that has any sort of organization. They want it to be personal to them. And I do understand the desire to have a personal spirituality, because everybody's spirituality speaks to them on a personal level. But if it gets to the point that you're the only person participating in your religion, you aren't really part of any sort of religious practice or tradition at all. You're just making stuff up as you go. And in this case, women making stuff up while opening demonic portals everywhere. Obviously a huge problem. But black women, on the other hand, how should I word this? There's a genetic element to all of this stuff. And more pagan ideals communicate with white people on a genetic level. And that's why a lot of white people are being called back to paganism, their ancestral roots, because they've been told to hate themselves for so long, and now that they're getting involved in this, they're realizing that, wow, I matter. My history, my lore matters. And it's empowering white people, and I think that's great. Black people, this is also happening to. The difference is black people have not been told to constantly hate themselves, and they're very in tune with their ancestral lineage and their group, their tribe. Things like witchcraft communicate with black women much more often, because that's part of their ancestral religious framework. Doesn't matter if you're African or if you're from the Caribbean or if you're like Southern Creole. All of this communicates with black women. This kind of voodoo, witchcraft, all this stuff. So when you're trying to convince people to abandon things that are communicating with them on like a DNA level, it becomes really difficult. And that's why I don't see enough people talking about this, mostly because people don't believe in genetics, epigenetics, blood memory, DNA memory. But I think that's very real. It's a very serious thing. And I see this a lot with Christianity, where Christians just don't understand why anybody would participate in any of this kind of ritualistic, paganistic, witchcraft, whatever behavior. Well, this is why. It speaks to our DNA, because this is something that we did for a very long time. Now, I know at the beginning I talked about being pro-pagan, and I am. I am pro the re-enchantment renaissance, which is taking place right now. But coming out of the Renaissance, people are going to have to start making choices on what they're going to do with their newfound information, that there is such a thing as the divine, for instance. And this is going to be very important for society as a whole. I don't know a lot about the female experience other than what women have told me their experience is like. But modern women crave power. This is why you see the girl boss types. This is why you see women doing anything to climb corporate ladders and become more powerful than men. But they also just feel like they've been out of control of their life, and now they want complete control of their life. Not realizing that we don't have control over our life. There are other forces at work, and it's not just them. They can't work their way into happiness. So we have to ask, are modern women disproportionately tempted by the occult? And I would say yes. Because for the modern woman, it's their aversion to patriarchy and their aversion to, well, really it's God, an authority male figure. But women very much don't like authority, and they don't like the idea of hierarchy. They do not like the hierarchy of spiritual authority, especially. And I've seen graphs that explain this better before, but women tend to view things like a horizontal line, whereas men tend to view things as a vertical line. With men, things just make sense that there's a hierarchy of authority. With women, it doesn't work that way. So I think that leads to a much more occult view of thinking. It's all very interesting stuff. I've been thinking about this video since I watched it, and I just wanted to make this video kind of talking about it. I feel like there's a lot more to say, but I just don't really have it fully thought through in my mind yet. But I guess in closing, if I could give any warning to women that are considering Wicca, witchcraft, the occult, my main warning is that you just don't know what you're getting into. And if you get into it, you're going to find out really fast. And channeling spirits, opening demonic portals, all of this kind of stuff is bad. And it's going to affect your life. Another interesting story that I read recently from another demonologist is there was a woman who was a Christian, just living her life and with her family. And all of a sudden, bad things just started happening to her all around her. Her house had major flooding issues all of a sudden. Electricity kept going out. There was a fire. Things were plaguing her house. And she went to a priest for guidance. The priest referred her to someone that understood a little bit more about cursed objects. And upon investigating this woman's house, someone had either accidentally or purposely, we don't know, dropped a talisman in this woman's house. While the demonologist was investigating and asked the woman, if she'd had any parties recently, she had a party at her house. Another woman was over there who participates in some variety of witchcraft. This woman had either purposely planted or accidentally dropped this talisman in this woman's house. The demonologist knew how to identify it, picked it up, removed it. The problems went away in her house. So even someone who's not a full practitioner of magic or understands how this works might be just dabbling, accidentally make an imbued talisman with all sorts of terrible power behind it, demonic power, and carry that around with them or drop it in someone's house. I mean, you have no idea how dangerous this stuff is. And that's my message to women, I guess, on this whole thing. Thank you all so much for listening to me ramble on this for a little while. If you're new to my channel, welcome. I've had some new subscribers recently. I really appreciate all of you. Feel free to give this video a like and a comment and let me know what you think. I will talk to you later. God bless you. Have a wonderful day.